I noticed the message just as the elevator doors slipped shut. One line from my family group chat glowed sharply against the dim screen. Dinner starts at 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Beneath it was a photo, every chair around the table filled except mine. Christmas rescheduled, celebrated, completed without me. No one had thought to mention it. By the time I reached my apartment, another notification appeared. A bill, $25,000 for Serena's car. No explanation. No greeting. Just an invoice. I placed my keys on the counter, the silence closing in, heavy and certain. They hadn't asked me home for the holiday, but they still expected me to open my wallet on command. I grew up in a house where quiet meant far more than anything spoken. My father, Grant Rowan, issued orders instead of conversations. My mother, Elise, softened his sharp edges but never buffered them. And Serena, 2 years younger but forever ahead in his eyes, lived comfortably inside the attention he reserved for her. When I was 11, I dragged an old computer tower from the garage and set it on the kitchen table. Dust shook loose as I opened the casing. I didn't know what any of it meant, only that it felt like something I could claim as mine. I leaned in, studying the parts as though the machine was a language waiting to be learned. Grant came in, coat still buttoned. He didn't ask what I was doing. Didn't step closer. His eyes flicked from the loose wires to my face. "Waste of time," he said flatly, hanging his keys on the hook. "Do something real." Behind him, Serena climbed onto a chair, swinging her legs. "Dad, look what I made." A drawing of a horse wearing a crown. Grant smiled, ruffling her hair. "That's talent." His voice never sounded like that for me. I remember touching the edge of the motherboard, as if I could hide inside the gesture. I closed the panel gently, carried the tower back to the garage, and felt something settle low under my ribs, a truth I didn't yet have the words for. I wasn't the child he wanted to succeed. When I turned 16, Serena received a used car. I got a handshake and a reminder to be responsible. 2 months later, she scraped the entire passenger side on a concrete pillar. Grant blamed me for not teaching her to park, though I'd never been in the car with her. Serena apologized once quietly, but when Grant entered the room, she let the story tilt toward my supposed negligence. It was easier for her that way. In high school, every science ribbon I brought home made Elise smile, but she tucked the certificates into drawers hidden. Serena's cheer trophies lined the hallway where guests would admire them. I learned to live in the spaces no applause reached. In college, when I called to share I'd been accepted into a cybersecurity program, Grant exhaled into the phone. "So you're still chasing that?" As if ambition were a flaw. Serena's updates were relayed like cheerful headlines, promotions, celebrations, praise, all delivered with polite distance. Not unkind, not warm, just detached. So when they didn't invite me to Christmas, I wasn't shocked. The pattern was older than the holiday itself. The bill arrived an hour later. $25,000. The subject line casual, careless. Below it, a short message from Grant, copied to Elise and Serena. "Handle this before the end of the month." No explanation. No hello. Just expectation. I stared until the numbers blurred. Serena had dented or scraped her car before, but this was the first time they'd asked me to pay for anything. And they asked on the very night they excluded me. Another buzz. Serena again. "Just take care of it." Dad stressed. "It's not a big deal. Not a big deal." Her favorite phrase when she wanted something to vanish without effort. I set the phone down, its screen pulsing light across the table. Outside, snow drifted along the balcony. Inside, my apartment felt too quiet, like it was waiting for a choice I hadn't made yet. The familiar ache rose in my chest, the shape of all the years I'd been expected to patch holes, be responsible, stay useful. They had left me out of Christmas but still assumed I'd fall into place when they needed something. A small part of me wanted to let it go, the way I always had. Another part, the one that had been growing in the background for years, simply paused. I scrolled through the group chat again. Serena laughing. Elise holding a tray of cookies. Grant slicing a roast. My seat empty. My name missing. Their celebration whole without me. The tightness in my chest sharpened. Not with sadness but with clarity. It wasn't that they forgot me. They had built the day around my absence. I inhaled slowly, exhaled. My fingers hovered over the screen but no message came. No anger. No justification. Nothing. I set the phone aside and opened my laptop. Blue-white light washed over the dark kitchen. And in that moment, a truth I'd never allowed myself to say aloud finally surfaced. They didn't erase me by accident. And I didn't have to stay written in pencil. Snow ticked softly against the balcony window. Gentle, rhythmic, the kind of sound that usually calmed me. Tonight it only emphasized how loud the silence felt. I opened my financial dashboard. Lines of figures glowed back at me. Solid, unambiguous. Everything my family never wanted to acknowledge. Years of contracts, deposits, bonuses, everything I had built without their knowledge and without their interest. My cursor hovered over the recent messages. The Christmas photo. The empty chair at the table. The forwarded bill for the car. Handle this before the end of the month. My father, Grant, always wrote like that, short, clipped, never a question mark in sight. As if my entire life existed to absorb the fallout of their decisions. As if being the family buffer was simply my designated role. I inhaled slowly and leaned closer to the screen, elbows resting against the cool countertop. When I was younger, I used to whisper justifications to myself during moments like this, phrases I hoped would make their silence gentler. I didn't know explanations anymore. The first tab I opened was the bank account linked to the car loan. My name wasn't there. Of course it wasn't. Serena's was and my father's. Yet somehow the debt had landed in my lap. The blinking cursor hovered beside the bank's contact number. I didn't call. Not yet. Instead, I opened a notebook, flipped to a blank page and wrote 3 lines. Car loan. Amount due $25,000. Borrowers. Serena plus Grant. The handwriting was steady, measured, almost cool. I turned the page. Christmas gathering. No invite. Message sent after dinner had already begun. Next page. Pattern. My contributions expected. My presence optional. I stared at the words. They didn't hurt. They clarified. The boundary forming in my mind wasn't emotional. It was logical. Clean. Necessary. I shut the notebook. The apartment felt different. Less like a place to rest and more like a command post. I pulled open a drawer and took out a folder filled with documents I hadn't touched in months. Partnership contracts, revenue reports, future valuations. The kind of material my family never bothered to ask about because they never believed I had anything worth showing. I laid everything out on the table, aligning the pages until they formed a grid, evidence, or maybe a map of where I had been and where I intended to go next. I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. Separation measured in facts, not feelings. The bank number flashed again. I tapped it. A calm automated voice. Please hold while we connect you. My fingers hooked lightly over the counter's edge. This wasn't anger. It was resolve, deep and anchored. A woman answered. How can I help you? I'd like to report a vehicle for repossession, I said evenly. The borrowers have defaulted. She asked for documentation. I gave her everything, every detail included in the forwarded bill. When she asked, what is your relationship to the borrowers? The answer came effortlessly. I'm not responsible for the loan, I said quietly. But they believe I'm still here to clean up after them. I'm not. She paused, the kind of pause where someone considers asking a personal question and decides not to. She processed the request, confirmed the next steps, and that was it. When I hung up, it felt like switching off a light, simple, final. No triumph. Just steadiness. In the reflection on the balcony glass, I saw myself, shoulders straight, hair pulled back, eyes clear. I opened my email. A new message from my father sat at the top. We need you to transfer the money tonight. I didn't open it. Beneath it, one from Serena. Please don't make this harder. I skipped that one too. I clicked new email instead. To Grant Rowan CC Elise Rowan Serena Rowan. Subject, car loan. I will not be paying this bill. It is not my responsibility. Please address it directly. I reread it, not checking tone, just accuracy. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't emotional. It was factual. I hit send. The soft click of the outgoing email felt louder than anything they'd said to me all year. I closed the laptop. The apartment resumed its quiet rhythm. Snow drifted outside, settling on the railing like dust on an old photograph. I didn't feel guilt or doubt. For the first time, I felt trajectory. A life where I wasn't a placeholder or the family's quiet emergency responder. A life shaped by me. I turned off the kitchen light. Darkness settled softly. Everything felt aligned. This time I wouldn't fix what they broke. Morning light crept across the floor, thin and pale. I woke to my phone vibrating, steady, insistent. Notifications stacked one after another. Calls, messages, voicemails. I didn't need to check to know who they were from. I made coffee first. Steam curled upward, smoothing the edges of the kitchen. I sat down, hands wrapped around the mug until warmth settled into my palms. Only then did I pick up the phone. Voicemail 1. My father's voice, sharp and restrained, cracking at the edges. Emberly, call me back immediately. Voicemail 2, shorter. This is not how family behaves. Voicemail 3, tight, strained. There's a problem with the car. Call me now. I deleted them all without listening further. Then a text from Serena appeared, spilling across the screen in frantic sentences. They were taking it. Dad was livid, and apparently this was my doing. I read the message once, then set my phone face down on the table. Fault. That word had shadowed me since childhood, hovering behind every demand, every unvoiced expectation, every long punishing silence. But this time it didn't land. My coffee had gone tepid by the time the next notification arrived. A photo from an unknown number. Our old Seattle driveway. 2 men strapping Serena's car onto a flatbed. Serena on the porch in slippers, hair mussed, arms wrapped tightly across her chest. Grant behind her, jaw clenched, phone in hand, glaring at the camera like I was the one holding it. A text followed. We need to talk. Answer your phone. I didn't. I closed the photo and nudged the phone across the table until it touched the edge. Some things didn't deserve to be confronted twice. By noon I was at the office. Denver sunlight hit the building's glass like a blade, slicing light into sharp reflections along the lobby floor. I walked through the brightness with a quiet certainty that had been building inside me all night. Upstairs, Kai Mercer, my co-founder, looked up as I stepped onto the engineering floor. You okay? He asked gently. I nodded once. Just a long morning. He studied me for a moment but didn't push. That was Kai. He understood when silence carried its own weight. We had a meeting with legal, then a product review, then a calm walkthrough of server updates. By 3 o'clock, my phone was still buzzing nonstop inside my desk drawer. When I finally checked it, I found a fresh barrage of messages. Grant. You owe us an explanation. Serena. I can't believe you do this during Christmas week. Elise, my mother, had sent only one. Are you safe? I opened hers, typed, I'm okay. Then put the phone away. That was the only answer anyone got. Around 5, the elevator chimed. The sound traveled faintly through the quiet hallway outside my office. Footsteps followed, hard, deliberate, unmistakably familiar. I turned as the door pushed open. Grant stood there, face sharp with anger. Serena behind him, lips compressed. Elise trailing softly, eyes lowered. Emberly, my father said, stepping in without waiting. We need to talk about this. I remained still. There's nothing to talk about. You had no right, he snapped. You embarrassed us. I let his accusation settle in the room's quiet. No, I said. I stopped carrying the consequences of decisions I didn't make. His jaw tightened. Family helps each other. Family invites each other to Christmas. Even family, I replied evenly, doesn't send an invoice instead of an invitation. Serena flinched. Elise looked up, the smallest breath catching in her throat. Grant jabbed a finger toward the phone on my desk. Call them. Fix this. I held his stare. The air between us felt cold, precise, inevitable. I'm done being used. The room went still. Grant stepped back. Not physically, but something in him withdrew, pulled tight, as if a truth had cut through his anger like a sudden draft. For the first time he understood. I wasn't negotiating. I wasn't returning. I wasn't his to command. He spun around muttering and left. Serena followed, eyes burning, her breath uneven. Elise lingered a moment, fingers brushing the doorframe. I'm glad you're safe, she whispered. Then she slipped out too. The door closed behind them, quiet, exact, final. I stood alone in the office, the city spread wide under the glass. For the first time the silence felt like authority. The apartment was dim when I returned that night. No new messages lit the screen. No vibrations rattled across the counter. The silence was whole, solid, almost structural, as if it was holding the walls upright. I set down my keys and walked to the window, leaning toward the glass the way I always did when thinking. Denver stretched below, calm and wide, lights blinking like slow-moving constellations. The city didn't care who I'd been to my family. It only mirrored who I was becoming. I made tea and carried it to the balcony. The air was colder now, soft with the kind of quiet that settles after a decision has already fully formed. I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the steam warm my face. My breath rose in pale ribbons fading into the night. There was no triumph in me. No rush, no victory, just space. Space to finally see the years I'd spent contorting myself around other people's expectations. Space to understand that leaving wasn't rebellion, it was survival. Space to feel for the first time that my life was mine in a way it had never been. Inside, the apartment lights glowed faintly on the hardwood. A jacket draped over a chair. A small stack of work files resting on the table. Ordinary things, quiet, uncomplicated, unburdened. I thought of Elise, my mother, and her one careful question. Are you safe? It lingered longer than everything else. For years, I'd mistaken distance for failure, silence for punishment. But standing there in the cold wind, I understood something simple and clean. Sometimes distance is the only version of love you can give yourself. A car rolled down the street below, headlights sweeping across the buildings like a slow-turning arc. I watched it disappear, feeling no pull toward anything behind me. The life ahead was quiet, deliberate, mine. I finished my tea, set the mug down, and let the night settle around me, open, light-free. I closed the balcony door. The latch clicked softly into place. No voices followed. No footsteps chased close behind. Just the steady hum of a life I had finally chosen without needing permission. People think the hardest part is letting go. It isn't. It's realizing how long you've been carrying a weight that was never yours. And when that realization comes, something shifts, clean, irreversible. Silence stops feeling like loss. It begins to sound like freedom.